Hey guys, welcome to another week's episode of GetPsyched, where we look at all things mental health and psychology. If you've been enjoying our videos, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. You can hit that little bell next to the subscribe button and you'll get weekly reminders every time I upload. And if you're going to be enjoying today's video, make sure to like, comment and share on it. And on today's video of GetPsyched, we're going to be taking a look at how to develop your productivity. We're going to be looking at my top 9 tips on improving your productivity and how we can actually develop productivity. So make sure to watch right to the end as well, because we've got some really key tips on how you can actually increase your levels of productivity. Now, before we get into the video, I'm not going to go into a massive explanation about productivity or even procrastination, which is related to some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about today. What I am going to do is I'm going to pop a couple of related videos down in the description, and throughout the video I'm going to pop a couple of links above my head on videos that we've done before on procrastination and productivity. We did one on productivity, I think, over a year and a half ago now, I think, around about that. And we looked at what productivity was and some key tips on productivity as well. But I wanted to do a bit of an updated version too, a little bit kind of correlated to what we're going through in coronavirus and things like that. A lot of us are locked down, and we want to kind of know how can I use some of this time, as difficult as that is at points, but how can I be productive with my time? So I thought an updated video would be good. I also took a look at procrastination. Again, I actually think that was one of our first videos. So you can check one of those out as well. I'll pop a link in the description for you to look at. So let's get right into the video of the top tips. And my first one is to do your most important task first. Now, people that utilize this technique call it MIT, which is most important task. It's abbreviated because it's so important for these people who are really productive. We can spend our lives checking off checklists of unimportant things, but when we actually want to develop our sense of productivity, we need to be investing time in the things that are most important. So when you kind of start your day, sometimes of course you can be a little bit lethargic, you can just have woken up. I know I've just woken up this morning and I'm shooting a GetPsyched video. This is my kind of one of my key tasks of the day that I wanted to get done. If you can actually invest some time in the most important task that you've got to do in that day, early on in that day, and get the majority of it done or focus on actually getting it finished, you can then leave the rest of the day to check off those kind of unimportant things. However, if you were to kind of do it the other way around, you've just woken up, you're a bit lethargic, and you're just checking off random tasks, you're both a bit tired and you're kind of investing energy in tasks that really aren't all that important. And then at the end of the day, you've got to do your big task. You've still got all that big stuff to come. Do that first, do the big stuff first, do those most important tasks first in the morning. That way it's going to really help increase your levels of productivity. My second tip is to cultivate a sense of deep working. Now, what exactly do I mean by deep working? Well, basically what deep working means is it's that kind of hyper level of focus, that really sustained process of focus and being able to utilize some really important work in a kind of key time frame. That's what deep work really is. And when we're trying to increase our productivity, we need to cultivate a sense of working deeper, of real focus when we're working. So how do we actually cultivate that? Well, there's a few things that we have to do. First of all, we have to create the right environment. And I think this is really important during coronavirus and lockdown, when actually many of us are working in the places that we live and we relax in. We need to cultivate an environment that encourages a sense of deep working, that allows us to be productive. So creating an environment, your desk, having some kind of nice environment around you in a certain room that you work in, these are the kind of things that are really important when we're trying to cultivate deep work. The other thing that I do when I'm trying to block off some time is I actually schedule in my deep work. I schedule in the time of my day when I'm really going to be focused on work. Now that could just be about an hour or 2 hours throughout the day. It doesn't really matter. You've got to think a little bit about when you work best. Now this could be related to my previous point about the most important tasks, and maybe cultivating that time in the morning, getting the most important tasks done in the morning around that scheduled time of deep work where you're really focused. I think there's also something here about allowing yourself to feel uncomfortable. Now, procrastination can be a big thing when we're trying to increase our productivity, but there's something here about allowing yourself to feel uncomfortable or being comfortable being uncomfortable when we're trying to do deep work. We can often get distracted, we can procrastinate, we can get frustrated, we can feel like we're not getting anywhere when we're doing a certain amount of work, when we're trying to do deep work. But allowing ourselves to be okay feeling uncomfortable is a really key component when we're trying to cultivate a sense of deep work. Okay, third point is to keep a distraction list. Now, I find this really helpful actually. I don't necessarily even write some of these things down. I actually have a PDF, a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet where I write down my distractions. Sometimes what I do is I actually just write down things that are distracting me in the moment. So, my phone is buzzing or something like that, I'll write that down. That process of getting it out of my mind and onto a sheet of paper, I find really, really therapeutic. I find that really beneficial when I'm trying to get rid of distractions. But what we could say is that often we get distracted by things that do warrant attention, that we do need to give attention to. If you're working hard and all of a sudden you realize that you don't have any food in the house for tonight, what you could do is you could write that down on your distraction list to remind you later. That process of getting it out of your mind and onto paper can be really, really beneficial, because we know that distractions can be like the kryptonite to when we're trying to improve our productivity or when we're trying to be more productive. Distractions are kind of the antithesis of that. So we want to get away from distractions. But some of those distractions we really do need to focus on. Like if you don't have any food that night, it doesn't really matter how hard you're working, you're going to have to get food at some point. Write it down on your distraction list, come back to it after your scheduled sense of deep work, or after you finish your most important tasks, your MIT, or your MIT. After you've finished your most important task, come back to your distraction list and say, right, hold on, I need to go to the shops and get some food. Get it out of your head onto a piece of paper. Distraction list is really, really helpful. Now, my fourth point is using the Eisenhower matrix. Now, Dwight Eisenhower, who cultivated this, was a military general who used this technique to establish the importance of tasks and the urgency of tasks. And it was popularized by Covey in his book, 7 Habits for Really Successful People, when he was talking about increasing levels of productivity. The Eisenhower matrix can be very helpful. It basically helps us assess how important certain tasks are and how much attention we need to be giving to those tasks there and then. You can see a little matrix of that just next to me here. And you can see, like the 4 different boxes. If you've got a thing that you really need to do, you could write out that Eisenhower matrix and plot where that task should go. Is this a really important task and is it really urgent? How desperately do I need to be focusing on this task right here and right now? Are there other tasks that are more important in this moment? Remember, when we're trying to be productive, it's not just about utilizing our time. It's not just about filling our time. It's about using our time in the most effective ways. And actually, I'm going to come to that in a little bit about another tip that we're going to be talking about. But I think often people get productivity confused. When they think about improving their productivity, they think about waking up earlier, going to bed later, and just filling their time with stuff. That's absolutely not the case. Some of the most productive people that you know or that I know maybe even work less than you and I, but they fill their time with important things. They fill their time with urgent tasks that they need to be getting done. That's what productivity is. So the Eisenhower matrix can be really, really useful for that. It's easy to draw out and you can just plot, say you've got 4 tasks during the day. Once you spend 5-10 minutes actually plotting these things out, you'll realize, hold on, this one task is super important, super urgent. I've got 2 or 3 others that really aren't that important right now. Let's focus on this one. I can come to those ones later if I have time. Okay, my next tip is the 80-20 rule, or utilizing the 80-20 rule. And this is basically an extension of the Eisenhower matrix, although the two aren't necessarily created by the same people. The 80-20 rule was created by Pareto, an Italian economist who wanted to establish how to utilize the minimum amount of time to get the maximum amount of results. The 80-20 rule is really helpful for productivity. Pareto basically stated that 80% of productivity results come from 20% of the time. And there's 80% of time there that's used with just, filling time, things that aren't really all that important. If we can understand that rule a little bit better, we can utilize our time more effectively and ultimately we can become more productive. So how do you actually utilize this rule? Well, a couple of things that you could do. You can focus on the 20% of the work that's most important for you and get that done, and think about how you can cut down on the other 80% of the tasks that you've got to do. Or you could think about what 20% of your time during the day is most valuable. When have you got that 20% of your time throughout the day to actually work? And that could be where you do your deep work. That 20%, you could block that off and say, right, I'm going to get 80% of my results in this 20% section. So we need to think a little bit about how we can do that. You need to think a little bit about how you can get the maximum amount of productivity out of that 20% of time, and think a little bit about, right, what's the 20% of the most important stuff that I need to get done, and what that 80% of stuff, how do I cut all that down? So think a little bit about that rule. That can be quite helpful at times. Okay, next point is chunking, or breaking tasks down into smaller chunks. Now, if you've ever done a psychology undergraduate in your first year in psychology, you might have heard a tutor talking about how you can use principles of psychology into studying better and being more productive in your studies. And one of the techniques that they talk about is chunking. There's been a lot of psychological studies done for people who break tasks down into smaller chunks compared to people who look at tasks as a whole, and how much more productive those people are and how much better results they get. Chunking is really, really helpful. If you're anything like me, you've got a massive to-do list of big things that need done. And if you look at that to-do list, you can think, man, I've really got to get that thing done. That's really big. I don't know how I'm going to get that done. It can seem overwhelming at times, and often your productivity can dip because you can just think, that's too big to deal with right now. One of the things that I do is to make a to-do list for each of the points on my big to-do list. Breaking the task down into smaller chunks really helps with productivity. Say you've got a university assignment to be getting done with. You've got a few weeks until the deadline and you haven't done any work, which I wouldn't advise. If you know anything about the GetPsyched study regime, you start your assignment super early. But say you have a deadline in a couple of weeks, you haven't done any work. You could be looking at that to-do list and say, get assignments done, or get that assignment done. That seems really big, that seems too much to deal with right now. Break it down. Think about getting your first 500 words down. Think about just getting that introduction down. Think about establishing a reading list or a reference list of references that you would like to use. Think about structure, get your structure done today. These are the kind of smaller chunks that can really aid productivity. I know it sounds basic, but it's a really effective tool. Okay, next point is to find repeatable shortcuts and to save them. Now, what I mean by this is actually a really big one for me. What I often do is I'll be doing a piece of work, or I'll be doing a university assignment, or I'll be writing a client report, or maybe doing some work for GetPsyched, and I'll work in a certain way and realize, hold on, that actually worked really well for me. That process, or that process that I used to get that job done worked really effectively. That was quick. I managed to get things done and to a high standard. I don't just celebrate that and I don't just leave it at that. I write out a script or a process on how I did that and I save it for later. So for example, let's use our university assignment example again. Say you're writing a university assignment and you've done a little bit of research on structure and you've realized that actually, hold on, this structure is super helpful for all my university assignments. Don't just leave it at that. Save that draft, save that template, make it repeatable and use it again in the future. You're gonna save a heck of a lot of time. You're gonna get used to that process of working. It's gonna increase your productivity. It's gonna help develop your level of productivity for that task. Save those templates, make them repeatable. Your productivity is gonna go through the roof. Right, next point is to learn your lessons on what you did before. If you're anything like me, again, using university, you've failed assignments before. I've failed assignments on my doctorate before. That's just one of the things that happens. Using the process or using the lessons from the feedback has been one of the most beneficial things for me passing future assignments. It's hard, it's tough, it's not nice looking over assignments that people said you haven't done well enough on. You get pretty critical feedback at points, but using that feedback to propel you for future assignments is how you're going to be more productive in the future. What I really want from this video is for you to get both short-term productivity increases, but also long-term productivity increases. And learning your lessons from the past is one of the key ways in which you can be productive over the longer term. So if things don't work out, if you're doing a task or there's something that you want to be getting done and it didn't work, learn the lessons from that. Even if it did work, learn the lessons from that too. Thinking about those repeatable templates on how to be more productive in the future. Learn your lessons from the things that have happened and your productivity will increase. Okay, final point is to find your golden hour. Now this is similar a little bit to the deep work, but I wanted to cover this again because for me, there's an hour throughout my day that I'm always most productive, and usually that's kind of very early in the morning, between the hours of 5:30 to kind of 8. That I get an hour in between there somewhere that's super productive for me. Find whatever, and it could be for you, it could be anytime, it could be late at night, it could be during the day, whatever. Find that hour that you allot for most days to get super amount of work done. That's gonna help with your productivity, to find your golden hour. It's subjective, it could be whatever hour it is for you, but find it, you're gonna get a maximum amount of productivity out of that hour. Okay guys, thank you so much for watching this week's episode of GetPsyched. This week we've been looking at my 9 top tips on increasing your productivity. I really hope you found this video helpful. If you have, make sure to like it, you can comment on it and I'll get back to your questions, and you can share it with other people too. And if you've been enjoying GetPsyched as a whole, make sure to hit that subscribe button and hit that little bell next to the subscribe button to get weekly reminders every time I upload. Thanks again for watching guys, and hopefully catch you next week.